Harvester was released at the end of 1996 on DOS. It was a horror-infused experience that combined classic point-and-click adventure gameplay, mixed with interactive movie stylings and even a little bit of traditional RPG-styled infused combat. Somehow though, it all comes together very well, for probably the most unique and at the same time the most disturbing game you'll ever play, ever. The story is excellent and immediately grabs you because you feel 100% connected to the main character Steve, who wakes up in a small town of Harvest in circa 1950s. Only problem is he has no idea who he is or how he even got there, just like the audience. From his own family's weird behavior, the extremely odd townfolk that he interacts with who all seem to know him, yet he knows nothing, and the fact that he's getting married in a few weeks to his high school sweetheart Stephanie, who he meets up with, and also has zero memory of anything. The plot only thickens as everything seems to lead to the Lodge, a large dodgy temple church type structure that is the source of everything creepy that happens in the small town of Harvest.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
The making of Harvester and the people involved are almost as fascinating as the game itself. It was originally announced at the Las Vegas CES show in January of 1994, but would only eventually get released at the end of 1996. Produced at a budget of a reported $1 million by the Dallas, Texas-based software company Futurevision, who had previously released the hidden gem PC game called Command Adventures Starship in 1993 to very good reviews. They were, however, still a small fry company compared to the juggernauts of that era. The game was the brainchild of Gilbert P. Austin, who had worked at Origin Systems as primarily a writer on some of their heavy hitters, including Wing Commander 2, Strike Commander, and Privateer. Here's Gilbert on the origins of the game. A friend of mine who wrote music at Origin, Dana Glover, contacted me and told me that Lee Jacobson of Futurevision was looking around for someone established to create games for them on a contract basis. I'd worked on Wing Commander 2, Strike Commander, and Privateer as a writer and as a storyboard artist, designer, and production supervisor for the cinematics, so I was pretty much the kind of guy they were looking for. I agreed that I'd talk to them, and so I was invited to come in and pitch any ideas I wanted. My feeling was that Futurevision, being a small company, would need something high concept to compete with the industry giants of the time, and I argued that Harvester was exactly that idea. After completing all the writing, all the dialogue, the designs, and shooting, directing, and casting all the FMV and character animation, Gilbert was technically done his job and moved on to other projects as a freelancer. Then entered producer at Futurevision, m.lee Jacobson, who would then take up and complete the game on a technical programming side. That would take another 2 years to complete after Gilbert had done his job, and releasing eventually at the tail end of 1996. It was in production so long that Gilbert went off and completed another full game that was released in the meantime called The Fortress of Dr. Radiaki, a crazy FPS game in 1994. The production was so lengthy that by the time the game got released, the company had actually changed its name to Digi FX Interactive, and the reason from all the interviews that I've read wasn't really anything strange at all, but seems that it really came down to the company being very small in terms of employees and programmers in the first place, with limited resources obviously, and everyone was really trying to complete this game. Lee Jacobson is also quoted in a 1995 article as saying that the game will be delayed by almost a year in late 1995 to make sure bugs and gameplay can be perfected, which was probably for the best in the long run. Although all the momentum and interest that they had garnered up in early 1994 at the CES show was completely forgotten or lost by the time the game had its eventual release. The company though didn't seem to want to compromise anything artistically, which is very admirable. Here's Jacobson on his vision. You hear a lot about games that start out as being controversial, then they get toned down, and pretty soon all that's left is the hype. We decided if we were going to do it, we would do it the right way. We would go all the way. The game was mimicking the most popular genre in PC gaming at that time, the point-and-click adventure style, although its eventual release at the end of 96, which was basically 97, meant the genre was already going into its twilight years. As Steve, you're free to wander around the town of Harvest from location to location by an overworld map. In areas you can chat to the weird townsfolk who have a lot to say and aren't simple one-line NPCs, which makes things very interesting. You can even type in your own questions. You can pick up items or weapons to use later or for puzzle solving and action. There's many dialogue trees that are available for info and humor. You can select items from your inventory to give people things for quests or activate situations with people, but the best part is being able to pick up weapons and pretty much kill any NPC in the game at any point, which leads the game down its many unique and completely different endings. Action is simple. You simply mash the mouse button with your weapon to attack and kill the enemy. It only needs a few hits to do the trick. Puzzles are mostly obvious. Talking and listening to people always gives you the clues to solve everything, and the town is just filled with objects and so many secrets to explore, which makes it way more interesting than a usual point and click, figuring out the true power that is controlling the town of Harvest through the many conversations. Here's Gilbert talking about the concept of the game. The concept of Harvester, the idea that at the end of the game I wanted the player to mull over whether he had internalized the over-the-top violence and surreal imagery of the game in the same manner that Steve had, and the primary ending. All this was in the initial concept that I jotted down in one of those small reporter spiral notepads in about 30 minutes. That's what I pitched to Future Vision, and they bought it. I had complete creative control and could do whatever I wanted, with the exception of explicit sex and nudity, sadly, but even so, I think I managed to get some pretty f***ed up stuff in there just the same. Graphically, Harvester is a product of the 90s through and through. I honestly love this style. It mixes extremely high-res graphics for the locations and FMV filmed characters, which gives it its super 90s vibe like nothing else you see now. The FMV sequences are a little bit grainy, but do not compromise on anything. It's brutally violent and over the top, but that's the whole point of it. It's a huge FU to censorship and what is perceived as a video game. The sound design is awesome, especially the music, which is something I usually don't get to say when looking back at old PC games, especially the DOS era, even though this is CD-ROM. It's varied, it has tons of strange 1950s inspired music with its happy-go-lucky tunes, juxtaposing the obvious on-screen creepiness. It works very well and adds a huge amount to the game's overall, almost tongue-in-cheek personality. Here's Lee just before the game's launch talking about what people are going to think about the game. I fully expect to see protests. We didn't wimp out on anything. There are going to be a lot of people who are offended by Harvester. That's why we voluntarily gave it an MA17 rating. That's why we put in the gore switch. Of course, if the game bothers you, don't buy it. Harvester is highly recommended to not only horror genre fans, but anyone who likes their entertainment infused with a large dose of humorous irony and witty social commentary. You can also ignore all that and just simply soak up its 70s grindhouse atmosphere. If that's all you want, it's totally up to you. Many outlets at the time refused to sell the game unless a gore switch was installed, basically allowing all the offensive violence to be removed, making the game essentially pointless. But it's there as an option and allowed many more stores to stock it. The US version of the game is the full uncut version. The UK and Australian versions have tons of material cut out of it, even though a gore switch is still installed, so you really want to avoid those physical copies. And as per usual, the game was completely banned in Germany, who still had its archaic 1980s video games are for kids rules in place, known as the Index. Despite being crazy fun and well made, it simply didn't sell enough to justify its extremely long development time and caused Digi FX to close their doors at the end of 1997. Here's Gilbert one more time on his thoughts about the re-release of his game to a new generation. I wonder how many people will find the game now, what the reception will be at the same time. It pisses me off that I'm making no money off it, but what the hell. Overall, I think it's cool.